To millions of fans, Sheriff Rosco P. Coltrane was the lovable, bumbling lawman of Hazzard County. A man whose floppy hat, rapid-fire catchphrases, and high-speed car chases were as iconic as the General Lee itself. But behind Roscoe's comedic antics was James Best, an actor whose career spanned decades, a man whose dedication to his craft elevated what could have been a one-note comic role into something enduring and beloved. James Best was not born into Hollywood glamour. He was a trained actor, a student of the legendary Lee Strasberg, who understood that comedy, like tragedy, demands precision, timing, and respect for the scene. Long before Roscoe, Best had honed his craft in more than 600 television episodes and numerous films. He worked alongside legends such as James Stewart in Winchester 73 and Paul Newman in The Left-Handed Gun, absorbing the rhythms, subtleties, and rigor that would later define his work on Hazzard. By the time he arrived in Hazzard County, Best was a veteran of Hollywood's highs and lows, yet Rosco P. Coltrane offered him something different, an opportunity to inject warmth, personality, and heart into a character that might have otherwise been cartoonish. Best didn't just play Roscoe, he built him. He improvised lines, added physical quirks, and shaped the sheriff into a figure who was silly, lovable, and surprisingly complex. Kids laughed at his clumsiness. Adults recognized the craft behind every pratfall, every exaggerated glance, every comical squeal of tires. But the man behind the badge was serious about his work. While the set often bubbled with laughter, Best brought decades of discipline to every scene. He arrived early, prepared scripts in hand, and treated each shot with the care of a stage actor performing for a live audience. He understood that comedy, especially slapstick, is fragile. Mistimed cues or careless improvisation could collapse the energy of an entire scene. He was patient, but he demanded focus, not for ego, but because he respected the audience and the craft. His dedication did not go unnoticed. Catherine Bach, who played Daisy Duke, often described Best as a mentor, someone who quietly guided younger actors through the technical and emotional nuances of performance. Denver Pyle, who portrayed Uncle Jesse, shared Best's old-school work ethic, and together they fostered an atmosphere of professionalism that balanced the chaotic energy of high-speed car chases and comedic mishaps. Yet James Best's devotion to Roscoe extended beyond performance. He saw the character as more than a source of laughs. He understood that the show's heart depended on authenticity, even in absurdity. Every improvised line, every over-the-top expression, and every comedic pratfall was carefully calibrated. Rosco P. Coltrane wasn't just comic relief. He was a bridge between viewers and the world of Hazzard County, a symbol of both joy and humanity. It was this combination, veteran experience, discipline, and heart, that made Roscoe unforgettable. While other actors might have coasted on the character's inherent humor, Best pushed it further, transforming the role into a timeless part of television history. Behind the floppy hat and clumsy antics lay a craftsman at work, a man who demanded respect for his art, and whose dedication would leave a lasting impression on cast, crew, and fans alike. And yet, beneath the laughter and chaos of the Hazzard set, tensions were quietly building. Fame, differing work styles, and clashing personalities would eventually test Best's patience, and his loyalty to the craft he so dearly loved. One castmate in particular would become the catalyst for a conflict that changed his relationship with the show forever. Behind the Southern charm, tensions on set. On screen, the Dukes of Hazzard radiated sunshine, mischief, and high-octane excitement. Bo and Luke Duke raced through dirt roads, Daisy Duke captivated with charm, and Sheriff Rosco P. Coltrane stumbled, spun, and skidded his way into viewers' hearts. But behind the cameras, the picture was far less idyllic. Beneath the laughter, the car chases, and the comic timing, a quieter tension simmered, one that often went unnoticed by the audience, but was impossible to ignore for James Best. Best had spent a lifetime honing his craft. Every line, every movement, every reaction came from decades of training under Lee Strasberg and experience alongside Hollywood legends. He believed in preparation, focus, and respect for fellow actors. But on the bustling Hazzard set, the fast pace and ever-changing demands often clashed with his methodical approach. Scripts were rewritten on the fly, blocking was altered last minute, and stunts required split-second improvisation. For some actors, the chaos was part of the thrill. For Best, it sometimes felt reckless. Disagreements weren't always dramatic. They were subtle, creeping in like a slow leak. Missed cues, incomplete rehearsals, offhand improvisations. These were small breaches of professionalism, but to a man like Best, they added up. One day, a key scene might proceed with a co-star barely familiar with their lines. The next, a camera crew would scramble because a blocking rehearsal had been skipped. On set, there was laughter, sure, but behind the jokes, Best could sense the tension rising. He didn't confront lightly. Best was polite, calm, and professional. He rarely raised his voice, and he never humiliated a colleague. But those who worked with him knew his expressions, his pauses, and his subtle body language could speak volumes. A raised eyebrow, a quiet sigh, a deliberate silence. These were warnings. A gentle audience might have laughed at Roscoe's bumbling, but Best's eyes often betrayed concern. He saw the potential for scenes to falter, for comedy to lose its edge, for the integrity of the show to slip. And there was one person whose approach grated against him more than anyone else. Unlike the others, whose lapses were occasional, this castmate seemed to test the boundaries consistently. Improvised lines went too far. Timing was ignored. Rehearsals were treated as optional. Best's patience, already stretched thin by the pace and chaos of production, was wearing down. By the fourth season, the cracks in the set's camaraderie were visible, even if subtle. Some actors laughed off mistakes, others simply ignored them. Best, however, could not. For him, professionalism wasn't a suggestion, it was a standard. He didn't seek conflict, but he also refused to compromise his principles. And in that quiet, simmering environment, a sense of unease grew. The tension was more than personal frustration. It was a collision of work ethics. The discipline of a seasoned actor versus the casual spontaneity of a co-star who didn't share the same reverence for craft. On a show built on humor, speed, and charm, this friction introduced a hidden layer of seriousness, a backstage reality that contrasted sharply with the carefree world portrayed on television. It was only a matter of time before this clash, subtle at first, escalated into something unmistakable. The inevitable confrontation would not only test James' Best's patience, but also reshape his relationship with the show, his co-stars, and the character he had worked so hard to perfect. The feud takes center stage. By the fourth season, the atmosphere on the Dukes of Hazzard set had shifted. The easy laughter and on-screen camaraderie that once defined the show were giving way to something heavier. James Best, the disciplined and experienced actor behind Sheriff Rosco P. Coltrane, was increasingly at odds with the casual, improvisational energy of a co-star whose approach clashed sharply with his own. Best had tolerated minor slip-ups and offhand improvisation for years. He had seen younger actors learn the ropes, and he had remained patient, even indulgent. But over time, what had once been minor annoyances became repeated breaches of professionalism. Lines skipped, blocking ignored, rehearsals treated as optional. On one particular day, it all came to a head. The scene in question required precise timing, an intricate mix of comic timing, movement, and dialogue that Best had carefully rehearsed. Every step, every pause, every expression mattered. But when filming began, one co-star arrived unprepared, oblivious to the care Best had taken. No apology, no acknowledgement, just casual disregard. Best reportedly froze, a mix of disbelief and disappointment crossing his face. He initially tried to resolve the issue quietly, a soft conversation in a corner, away from the cameras and crew. But when the behavior continued, patience gave way to resolve. Voices rose, not in anger, but in pointed precision. Words were measured, sharp, and unmistakably serious. What might have seemed minor to others felt monumental to Best. It was no longer just about a scene. It was about respect, dedication, and the integrity of the craft he had devoted his life to mastering. Then came the moment that stunned the crew. Best set down his script and walked off the set. No shouting, no dramatic exit, just a quiet, firm decision. Production came to a halt. The usual hum of activity stopped mid-shot. Everyone on set understood what had just happened. This wasn't theatrics. It was a boundary drawn with finality. Producers scrambled. Meetings were held. Attempts to mediate were swift, but ultimately limited in effect. Best was clear. He would return to work, but not under the same circumstances, and certainly not sharing scenes with the co-star who had crossed the line. Adjustments had to be made. Scripts were rewritten. Scenes were shot separately. The editors stitched together sequences to preserve continuity. The public never noticed. The episodes aired seamlessly, maintaining the humor, charm, and chaos that audiences loved. But behind the scenes, a new normal had emerged. James Best had made a choice that few would understand outside the close-knit circle of cast and crew. It was a quiet stand, emblematic of his entire career, principled, disciplined, and unwavering. Best wasn't seeking drama or confrontation. He was defending his craft, his standards, and ultimately, the character of Rosco P. Coltrane. This episode marked a turning point. The camaraderie that had once defined the set was now tempered with caution. Friendships were tested, loyalties subtly shifted, and while laughter continued to echo between takes, a silent understanding hung in the air. James Best had drawn a line that would never be crossed again. The mystery deepens. Who was the co-star? For the devoted fans of the Dukes of Hazzard, the idea of tension on set seemed almost impossible to imagine. After all, the show thrived on a sense of family. On screen, the cast teased, laughed, and schemed together, weaving a world of playful rivalry and heartfelt moments. Sheriff Rosco might stumble through Hazzard County, but he did so with charm and energy, often alongside Deputy Enos, Bo, Luke, Daisy, and Uncle Jesse, creating a seemingly unbreakable ensemble. Yet behind the camera, reality was more complex. Rumors first began circulating quietly, suggesting that James Best, the man behind Rosco P. Coltrane, had taken an unthinkable stand. He refused to share scenes with a particular co-star. Fans were shocked. Who could inspire such a firm boundary from someone so universally admired? Speculation spread fast. Some suspected Tom Wopat and John Schneider, the actors portraying Bo and Luke Duke. Both had clashed with producers over pay and creative control, and their temporary departure during the 5th season made them prime candidates for fan theories. Wopat's reputation for a rebellious streak, combined with Schneider's youthful inexperience, seemed enough to spark tension. Others pointed toward Ben Jones, the actor behind Cooter Davenport. Known for strong opinions and occasional clashes with production, he had left the show briefly in season 2, fueling rumors that he might have provoked Best. Catherine Bach, who played Daisy Duke, was considered by some too. She rarely shared scenes with Best, leading to speculation that off-screen incidents might have strained their relationship. However, insiders quickly dismissed this idea. Bach often praised Best as a mentor and a consummate professional. Then there was Sonny Schroyer, Deputy Enos Strait. The duo of Rosco and Enos was iconic. Comic relief, perfect timing, and seemingly effortless rapport. They had genuine chemistry on screen, and Schroyer often spoke highly of Best, calling him a mentor. This made him a less obvious suspect, yet some subtle signs hinted at underlying tension. Occasional stiffness in interviews, brief moments of distance, or controlled silences when together. The mystery only deepened over the years. Crew members occasionally mentioned unspoken issues in rare interviews. Observers noticed that, in later seasons, scenes featuring Rosco and Enos were sometimes shot separately or pieced together, with fewer close interactions than in earlier episodes. While casual viewers might have missed it entirely, those behind the camera saw it clearly. Hints accumulated slowly. Nothing was dramatic or scandalous, no shouting matches or public outbursts. But the subtleties were there. Glances, pauses, and quiet shifts in blocking. It was a fracture carefully concealed under layers of professionalism and on-screen charm. Fans remained intrigued. Who was this mysterious co-star? Why would someone as warm and devoted as James Best set such a firm boundary? The answer lingered like a puzzle, teasing the public's imagination for years, until insider accounts gradually revealed the truth. And when the name finally emerged, it was far more surprising and human than anyone could have anticipated. The truth emerges. When the name finally surfaced, it startled fans, not because the actor was notorious for conflict, but because he was widely seen as gentle, respectful, and even endearing. The co-star James Best had quietly refused to work with again was none other than Sonny Schroyer, the soft-spoken actor behind Deputy Enos Strait. On screen, Rosco and Enos were inseparable. Their comedic timing, playful banter, and brotherly energy made them one of television's most memorable duos. Viewers saw a seamless partnership filled with laughter, chase scenes, and misadventures through Hazzard County. But behind the scenes, the relationship was far more complicated. The tension had not arisen from a single explosive argument. It was a slow accumulation of small, often overlooked moments. Crew members recall that Best, a seasoned professional trained under Lee Strasberg, approached every scene with meticulous care. He rehearsed lines, marked scripts, and refined every movement to create flawless comedic beats. He poured his decades of experience into Rosco, determined to elevate what some might have considered a purely goofy role. Schroyer, by contrast, brought a lighter, more casual approach. While talented and dedicated in his own right, he occasionally arrived late, riffed off script, or made jokes during rehearsals. Moves Best felt undermined the tone and rhythm of the scenes. Each incident may have seemed minor to outsiders, but to Best they reflected a lack of respect for the craft he had devoted his life to. The breaking point came during a scene Best had painstakingly reworked. Schroyer reportedly made an offhand comment about not sweating the small stuff. Meant as a joke, it struck deeply. To Best, it wasn't humor. It was dismissive. Those nearby noticed a shift. The smile vanished, the conversation ended, and Best quietly walked off set. It was a clear, unspoken declaration. He would no longer share scenes with Schroyer. From that day forward, the production adapted. Directors altered blocking, scripts were tweaked, and editors stitched scenes together to preserve the illusion of continuity. Fans at home never noticed the subtle changes, but the cast and crew knew. The boundary was firm, deliberate, and permanent. Even after the show ended, the rift endured. At conventions, both men appeared, posed for photos, and greeted fans. But interactions were measured and polite, never intimate. Schroyer continued to speak respectfully of Best, calling him a mentor, while Best avoided discussing the matter publicly. Their silence spoke volumes. This was not a feud fueled by anger or gossip. It was a quiet breach of trust, a clash of values and dedication, a disappointment that could not be undone. In the world of James Best, a man defined by discipline, artistry, and integrity, such a principle mattered above all else. When the truth emerged, it offered fans a glimpse into the real dynamics of Hazzard County's beloved cast. It revealed that even the people who made us laugh the most had boundaries, vulnerabilities, and standards they would never compromise. And in that quiet professionalism, Best left a lasting lesson. True respect for one's craft is non-negotiable, even in the face of fame, friendship, and television magic. Legacy of James Best. When James Best passed away in 2015, the world remembered Sheriff Rosco, but also the man behind the character. Disciplined, generous, and fiercely professional. His legacy went beyond laughter and catchphrases. It was a testament to standing firm, maintaining artistic integrity, and valuing respect above all. The behind-the-scenes story adds depth to the public memory. Even in lighthearted worlds, real emotions exist. Best's choice, quiet and principled, reminds us that true legacy is built on craft, conviction, and the courage to uphold standards, regardless of the spotlight.